About 3 years ago, my husband and I decided to go on a trip to the Amazon. We were staying in a city called Manaus, which is the capital of Amazonia. It is approximately 6,000 miles from the United States. The only way to get there is by airplane or by ship. It is also extremely hot. It has an average temperature of about 90 to 95 every day. And the humidity runs about 85 to 90 also. So you kind of get an idea of what this place was like. We stayed at a hotel that was about 5 miles out of town. It was a lovely hotel, an old hotel. It had long corridors. It had a lot of mahogany, which I guess is the wood of that area. And the room itself was extremely large, covered in this dark wood, and you had a view of the Amazon River as you looked out. Well, as it happened during the night, as we were about to leave in a couple of days, my husband got very sick. He got so sick that he was unable to move, and I was getting panicked at this point. You have to remember that Manaus is in Brazil. The primary language is Portuguese, and I knew nothing about Portuguese, or did not know how to speak Portuguese at all. So I went down to the main desk, explained my situation as best I could, and got across that I really needed help for my husband. This guy at the desk sent up 2 men in a wheelchair, and we got Jim into the wheelchair. Now, he was incoherent, not speaking, was not able to move, so this was quite a task to get him into the wheelchair. We moved down the long corridor, ended up at the front desk where they called a taxi. Now, I guess they don't use ambulances in Manaus because everywhere we went, we had to use a taxi. So we got, with the help of these 2 young men, I was able to get my husband into the taxi, and he took us to a hospital in the city of Manaus. I got out of the taxi, went inside, and told them as best I could with my broken Portuguese and their broken English that my husband was ill and needed help. As it turned out, we couldn't stay in that hospital. I don't know why. Maybe it was a maternity hospital. I have no idea. Anyway, we had to get back into the cab. I had to get back into the cab and go back to a second hospital. We got to the second hospital in Manaus, and I get out to get my husband into a wheelchair with another guy, bring him to the front desk, and there was a physician there who spoke some English. I guess he was educated in the United States. So I explained to him what was going on, and he says to me, "I think your husband had a stroke." That's what I was thinking too, because of the way he was acting, his arms, his legs, his garbled speech, the whole 9 yards. And I knew that if they could get medication into him within a certain period of time, we would probably be okay. So they said to the doctor, that's what I told the doctor, and he said, "Well, that's true. However, I need to have a CAT scan before I can do that, give him that medication. And we don't have a CAT scan at this hospital." So at this point, we have to get my husband back into another wheelchair, call another cab, get the cab at the hospital, and go to a third hospital in the city of Manaus where they did have a CAT scan. Get out of the taxi, go to the front desk, get my husband into a wheelchair, and so forth. And it turns out they had a CAT scan, but it costs $2,000 cash up front before they would even look at him or do anything for him. I said, at this point, I was probably at the end of my rope, probably not too coherent in my speech. Anyway, I was very nervous. The girl at the desk who did speak a little English said, "I will call the hotel where you stayed. They usually have tour guides there that speak English, and maybe they can help you." So within about 10 or 20 minutes, this young man came His name was Francisco, and he was able to interpret what was going on and talk to the people at the desk. And I said to him, I have a credit card. Maybe I can get money off my credit card and pay this bill so that Jim can have his CAT scan. So we got again into another cab, a new cab, and went to 5 ATMs in the city of Manaus. Some of them were in hotels, some of them were out on the street, some of them were in malls or grocery stores, and I could not get any money off the ATM, off my credit card at that point in time. So at this point, I think Francisco thinks she's going to die. I mean, she's going to have a heart attack herself. And he says to me, I will get you the money. Now, mind you, I did not know this guy from anywhere. I had never met him before, never seen him before, didn't know anything about him. We go to his apartment. He goes up into his apartment and comes out with $2,000, saying, I will use it. We go back to the hospital, and he speaks to the people at the desk, because he spoke fluent Portuguese, and explained to them that he had the money and he would pay for whatever it was that I needed. Well, as it turned out, my husband did not have a stroke. What he did have was low blood sugar. His blood sugar was 20. And once they had started to give him dextrose and water, he started to come out of this fugue state he was in, this fit state he was in, and was able to do better. But Fernando did pay for everything that was needed at that point at the hospital. And from this experience, I have learned a couple of things. One is that your fellow man, there are some good people out there who will help you out in a terrible situation without asking for anything in return. And secondly, always carry Coke or some form of sugar with you when you travel, because you never know when you might need it. And that is my story.